Hey everybody, welcome to Groovy Tunes. I'm Wild Bill, and I've been meaning to do a video about Lee Scratch Perry since he passed away. I feel bad for the guy because, when Charlie Watts, the drummer from the Stones, passed, everybody knows Charlie Watts, but, Lee Scratch Perry died soon after. I did a post on Facebook for my friends about him, and it was like, I doubt if, hardly anybody knew who the guy was. And we're talking probably one of the most innovative record producers ever, who's responsible for so much music that's still going on today. And during the course of this short video, I'll make the connection for you, because I think everybody knows when it comes to reggae, everybody knows who Bob Marley is. Bob Marley was like an international superstar. You don't have to even be a fan of reggae to be a fan of Bob Marley. Some people transcend their genre. Like, you don't have to like reggae to love Bob Marley. You don't have to be a country fan to love Johnny Cash. And so it was with Bob Marley. For a lot of people, their knowledge of reggae music kind of stops there. Maybe they know some Jimmy Cliff, the soundtrack to The Harder They Come, which is a pretty cool collection on there. But I would encourage people to go on YouTube. You could the albums I'm going to show here, you could find any of these on YouTube and check them out to see if it's something that you like. But to sum up, Lee Perry, he was 85 when he passed. I was hoping to see the guy. Honest to God, I mean, he was still touring. God love him. He was still touring behind his the anniversaries of his albums, like Super 8, which is one of the ones I'll show. But in the 60s, Lee Perry, he got involved with the music scene, and I think one of the guys he worked with, Coxsone Dodd, I believe, gave him the nickname Chicken Scratch, which just got shortened to Scratch. And that's how he ended up being called Scratch. I'll refer to him just as Lee Perry for the sake of brevity, but I guess Lee wasn't happy with Coxsone Dodd. He felt like he was ripping him off. Lee felt like he was, writing songs, wasn't getting credit for him. So he moved off to another label, and he cut a record called People Funny Boy. And that was a record intentionally to disrespect, Coxsone Dodd. It was a diss record. And, Lee Perry was working with another guy for a while in Jamaica, and he ran into the same problem. He wasn't happy with the way he was getting treated or the amount of money he was getting. So eventually Lee Perry went off on his own, created his own label, Upsetter. The group he came up with were called the Upsetters, because the first record that Lee Scratch Perry ever cut was called I Am the Upsetter, and that's where that connection comes in. But it wasn't until 1973 that Lee Perry built a studio in his backyard, and he called it the Black Ark. The guy was kind of, religious, but in a weird way. Bob Marley was truly a Rastafarian, but Lee Perry kind of was doing his own thing. Lee Perry didn't even have dreadlocks. Besides, smoking a ton of ganja, or collie weed as he called it, he was doing some hard drugs, like dropping acid. And I think because of the guy was an innovative genius in the studio. But anytime there's a movie we watched on YouTube, there's a documentary called I Am the Upsetter, and it's narrated by actor Benicio del Toro. And I swear to God, anytime you put Lee Scratch Perry on in front of a camera, the dude is just batshit crazy. I mean, the way he talks is like a combination of like religious talk combined with profanity, and it just always comes off as batshit crazy. You feel bad for the guy. You're like, but yet, when you in the studio, this is basically what he did. I guess going back to the beginning, I first learned of Lee Perry when I read this book called it's a biography about Bob Marley called Catch a Fire by Timothy White. It's such a cool book on Bob Marley's life and about his, being a kid in 9 Mile, that stretch of Jamaica. That was just, I mean, it was so, Bob Marley was such a poor kid. And he ended up, with the Wailers' early records, Lee Perry created a buzz with what he was doing in the Black Ark, what he was doing with his recording techniques. He had a kind of primitive studio. He had a 4-track recorder, and he was competing against the big major studios in Kingston, Jamaica. Like, I think Studio One is one of them. They had like a 16-track recorder with modern equipment, but yet everybody was intrigued by what this guy was coming up with in this little studio called the Black Ark. They heard these innovative sounds and they wanted to be part of it. So Lee Scratch Perry ended up working with Bob Marley and the Wailers, Junior Mervyn, the Heptones, the Congos. Just everybody in Jamaica wanted to, be part of this new sound that was going on. But some of the techniques that he used, basically what Lee Perry did was, he would take an existing reggae song and he would do a dub version of it. He would take that song and he would punch up the bass and drums, and then he would take the vocals, and the vocals would like sporadically go in and out, like phase in and out. He used all kind of reverb and echo effects, and he even sampled. He was one of the first guys to ever sample. He took the sound of his baby boy crying, and you'll hear that in some of the dub records that he did. You'll be like, did I just hear a baby crying? And it's like, yeah, it was his son. So I mean, he did all kind of weird things. He even had, you'll hear like this weird, it sounds like a dying cow. And basically he had one of the guys in the band, he took like a paper towel tube and put tin foil all around it. I mean, he would do anything to get some crazy sound that he heard in his head. But I guess a couple years ago, I got into, when I first got a turntable, I checked out Rolling Stone's top 40 stoner albums of all time. Let me put this record up. One of the ones on that list is called The Congos. The name of the album is Heart of the Congos, and that's basically a Lee Scratch Perry produced record, with his famous dub sound all over it. And I got into that. I'm like, everybody's so familiar with Bob Marley, and it's like, this other reggae music deserves, a listen to, and deserves some attention. So the Congos, to make that list of the Rolling Stones top 40 stoner albums of all time, that was pretty cool. So that, once I learned that Lee Perry was the producer behind this, I started checking some of his stuff out, and I stumbled upon Arcology. It's an anthology of music that was recorded at the Black Ark, and I really got into that. So eventually, when it came time for me to get into some albums on Record Store Day, one of the first ones I ever got was, this is a Record Store Day exclusive. It's Lee Scratch Perry, Roast Fish, Collie Weed, and Cornbread, which is the backbone of every Rastafarian diet. But that's a cool record. If you ever want to know what somebody's best albums are, all you got to do is go on Google or Microsoft Edge, whatever you got, Bing, type in Lee Scratch Perry best ever albums, and it'll bring up a list. And every one I have on here is like the top 3 albums on that list. So this was cool to get on. It says like red vinyl, but it's more like a light brown. If you could see that. Is that cool? It says Zion of, no, Lion, I'm saying Zion. Lion of Judah. So this is, like I said, this is a RSD exclusive. I'm glad I got this. It's pretty goddamn groovy. And as you could tell, if you could look behind me, I'm all about groovy, man. So the next one I got, I can't remember if I got this from a record store. I think I did. This is Super 8, and that has some great stuff on it. One of my favorite Lee Scratch Perry songs ever. The third track is called Black Vest. Listen to Black Vest on YouTube, and just get into the bass. The bass, it reminds me of Aston Family Man Barrett playing bass on Three Little Birds, and just has some variations on it. But that's one thing about the reggae people. They would take from each other. You could call it borrowing, you could call it stealing, whatever you want. But a lot of that was going on in reggae. So of course with Super 8, one of the funny things with Lee Perry is that he would do a follow-up, and so you got Lee Scratch Perry and the Upsetters, Return of the Super Ape. And my girlfriend Lisa made a really funny joke, saying that, is there a son of Super Ape? It's not, I guess it does sound kind of like a B movie, but that's also a cool album. Just notice the difference between the two apes. One's like kind of, big and, strong. The other one looks like frickin' Bigfoot. Lee Perry, like I said, he did a lot of drugs, so Lord knows what's up, with this man. But I'll keep that up while I'm still talking about him. One of the cool things, and I guess, a lot of people wouldn't know this, is that I want to make a couple points here. When Lee Perry worked with Bob Marley, this was like around 1970, and they did an album called Soul Rebel. And there's some great stuff on there. That's a good album to check out too. Just to hear Lee Perry's, sound combined with Bob Marley and Wailers was a great combination. But things went wrong because Lee Perry for the album cover, he put a chick with like her shirt open, her boobs are hanging out, and she's holding like a AK or something. And as you could imagine, Bob Marley was not happy with that radical image. It's not exactly what he was promoting. He was all about, he was about, an uprising, but a peaceful one. Kind of like MLK, Bob Marley, remember he had the One Love concert where he had both members of the political parties like shake hands on stage. That's what Bob Marley was all about. So also Lee Perry had leaked the album, I think, in the UK to try to garner some more attention, which was a popular thing in America. I was just talking the other day. I was talking about Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, and his producer John Landau had leaked out copies of Born to Run to radio stations in America to kind of create a buzz, which helped get more funding from, I guess, Columbia Records. But Bob Marley was pissed, and he broke ties with Lee Perry, but they ended up making up later. They ended up, if you've ever heard, of course everyone has a copy of Bob Marley's Legend in their collection. Like I said, even people that don't really like reggae have Legend by Bob Marley. The last song on it, Punky Reggae Party, Bob Marley actually went to Lee Scratch Perry and asked him to produce that record. And it's funny because since they were both in the UK, they ended up having an influence on the punk rock movement. If you ever check out the lyrics to Punky Reggae Party, he mentions, reggae stars like Toots and the Maytals, which I would highly recommend. But he also name drops the Dam, the Jam, and the Clash, which is pretty radical, that they crossed paths. And actually when the Clash did a cover of Junior Murvin's Police and Thieves, they went right to the source. They called up Lee Scratch Perry and asked him if he would produce it. So Lee Perry ended up producing one of the first, punk rock albums. The techniques he used for dub music ended up working its way into electronica, drum and bass. So he ended up working with guys like people in electronica like Adrian Sherwood, which probably most people won't ring a bell, but he worked with the Beastie Boys. He had a song on Hello Nasty. He worked with the Orb. It's just funny how, one man had so much influence on music. Besides reggae and punk rock and electronica, he also had an influence on hip-hop and rap. And you're like, well, how's that? Because the songs that were coming out of Jamaica in the 70s, they had what was called toasting on them. And toasting was basically a form of rapping. And of course these reggae records with toasting on them ended up where else? In the Bronx, in New York, which gave birth to rap music. So, like I said, it's just crazy that one man had so much, musical influence in so many genres all over the world, and yet not that many people know who he is. So, like I said, I would recommend checking his stuff out on YouTube. Learn a little bit of the history of the Black Ark. So much great music came out of there. But like I said, unfortunately, anytime you see Scratch on camera, like I said, he's just nuts, and I think it was just too much acid. It affects some people that way. Weed is one thing, but I don't know. I could never condone LSD, because some people, like, look at Sid Barrett from Pink Floyd. So I think people who are prone to like having psychological problems, doing an acid trip is enough to like just put them over the edge. They just don't seem to ever come back from it. But that's enough for me. I haven't done a video in a while. There's the man himself. Check him out. That's actually a picture in front of the Black Ark. He did all kind of painting over it and stuff, so that was pretty cool. So if you like this video, of course, hit like and subscribe. I just got a ton of vinyl in the mail today, so I always got something to talk about. We'll keep doing these videos. Alright, peace out.